Hi guys, and welcome to this special edition of the Results Show. So following on from our previous episode where we're talking about magicians and wizards, what we're now looking to do is basically we're going to be doing a series of episodes where we're looking at people who have successfully integrated the practice of NLP and of course all of the other complementary technologies that we've been talking about into their life, both personal and professional. And we are delighted to be joined today by the lovely Jacqueline. Jacqueline, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Peter. Really appreciate that. And David, of course.
And I'd just like to say welcome to
the Results Show. As you can see, since last time, we've basically upgraded our technology because a lot of you guys were saying, you know, kind of like, what sort of microphones do you use? We basically use this one because it's nice and lightweight to carry. David, what's your opinion?
Well, it's collapsible, so I can take it wherever I want to go in the world, just pull the plug out and the air goes out, and that's it.
And the customer's office don't have a problem with you kind of like producing that from your suitcase?
Absolutely. And you can immediately do your Elvis impersonations.
Which often in some countries is a good replacement for a visa if you've forgotten to do paperwork.
Elvis gets let in everywhere.
Low tech as well.
As you can see, what we're doing now is we're giving Jacqueline just time to consider her joining the program, or whether it was a good idea or not. So, Jacqueline, you and David go a long way back, don't you?
We do. I think it was around about 2000. That's when I did my first NLP training. It was my HR, I was in corporate at that point. I was working as a consultant with a training company, and I just transitioned into the sales team. So it's quite a big gap from what I've been doing. Consulting, easy peasy for me. Working in sales, not so much. And it was Mary, our HR director. She'd just come back from one of your trainings, and she was telling me all about it. And she said, I think this would work for you. So the company actually put me through the training. So I went through practitioners, and then I went through master prac. And then, quite a few years later, when I'd already established my own business, that's when I did the trainers training as well.
So Jacqueline, I mean, transition from HR to sales is a bit of a big transition.
Oh, well, it was actually from consulting. So it was, I was consulting for the sales team. I was the good guy in the whole process. I was like, of course we can fix that for you, and talk about implementation and exciting things that they could do. So I was definitely the good guy. The sales guys and gals, they were looking for the sale. So my job was to sweeten people up, and then they would go in and they would get the sale. So it was Mary from HR who recommended you. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then you went to set up your own business, which was the Athena Network.
That's right. And because after doing the practitioner training and doing the master practitioner training, I realised I didn't want to be in corporate anymore. Right. So there were lots of, my values were completely out of alignment with the role that I was in, but also at that point with the organisation as well. There were lots of changes that were happening, and anybody else would go, it just doesn't feel right. I knew after the training it was because my values were in alignment. So that's when I made the decision that I was going to leave. Again, Mary in HR, this isn't a euphemism, there is actually, or was actually, a Mary in HR. Mary said, hang on, because I said, I really want to leave. I've had it, a bit more dramatic than that. I said, I'm done, I'm leaving, it's just not in a lunch. She said, hang on. And what I didn't know, and she did, was that they were going to be making voluntary redundancy.
Right, okay.
Yes.
I was able to volunteer to leave my role. And that's when, but what was beautiful about it was the fact that I've been doing all of my training with you. So it was NLP, it was timeline, it was hypnotherapy. Did do a few other trainings with you as well. So presenting magically. Gosh, a few more anyway. I think I was kind of...
There's a trainer's training in there as well, wasn't there?
There was trainer's training, but that wasn't until a little while later, Peter. That wasn't until I'd established my own business, and I reviewed and I thought, I need to I need to enhance what I already know now. I need to see behind the curtain.
Right, like the Wizard of Oz.
Yep, exactly that. That's what I needed to do.
Yep.
So, I mean, because obviously just before we came on the call, you were saying that, looking at the different states that people go through in terms of, unconscious, uncompetence and all the rest of it. And you kind of now got to the stage of unconscious competence because, as you're saying, it's been inured in your life for many years. Is it possible for you to kind of cast your mind back to the very early 2000s when this was just starting to enter your existence and come onto your radar? What sort of differences did you see within your personal and professional life which made you think, actually, this stuff is actually stuff that's going to work? It is going to, give me the results, getting the name of the show in there, give me the results that I want.
Yeah, I think I was really asleep to what I desired when I attended the first training. So that with the practitioner training, it had never occurred to me that I could create what it was that I wanted. But there were other things as well. I was very, very busy blaming the organisation for everything that was happening to me. These are my thoughts back then. And going through the training, and I think it was day 1, day 2, it was like, oh my goodness, if I accept 100% responsibility, then actually I can consciously choose the future that I would love. So that for me was probably one of the biggest things, and still go back to that all the time. I can judge, I'm human, and I can be a bit judgy, and then it's like, okay, well, if I accept 100% responsibility for whatever it is that's happened, where am I culpable? How have I contributed to this?
Is this what you guys call putting yourself at cause? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that for me, that's one of my biggest. I think I'd probably go to that place every single day in my life, where
Wow.
I'm actually, okay, how can I make a different decision instead of sitting and whining? How can I move forward in my life and in my business? So who I was then, in the year 2000-ish, was someone who didn't know that they could actually create what they wanted, or that they had the autonomy to do that. I genuinely, I think this is quite common, but I genuinely went to the training thinking, by the time I come out of this training, I'll be able to sell more. That was my brief. That was why I was doing NLP.
Yeah.
Because I into this sales role, and I thought, yes, I'm going to be the best salesperson because I've learned NLP. In actual fact, what it did was made me realise I wasn't in the right role. There were other things I wanted to create in my life, and it was quite quick, actually. I say quick, I mean, other people might have thought it would be 3 weeks, 3 months, but I had a transitional period so that by 2003, the beginning of 2003, so just under 2 years in total, I was out and I'd set up my own business.
That sounds...
And it was good from day one, if you like. There wasn't any icky period.
Yes. That almost sounds like your experience, isn't it? Because in terms of the sales, that's kind of how you got into NLP back in the day.
I mean, I did my practitioner training back in May 1993, and as I mentioned in previous episodes, because I believe my path, my purpose, my mission, if you like, was to create world-class sales training based on NLP.
Yeah.
And I was already running some trainings based on NLP just from reading books. I thought, and it was going quite well, so I thought, maybe I better get trained in this thing. And then, little did I know what was actually in store when I did my practitioner training. Similar to what Jacqueline has said, it was like, it's a bit cliched these days, but it was life-changing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I still think, back to 1993 and today, and Jacqueline, I'm interested to hear your take on this, because the me of 1993 and the me of 2025 are kind of like unrecognizable.
Yeah.
It's like, who was that person?
Yeah. I can completely relate. I've been doing a big declutter of admin. You know, I can hold on to things for way, way too long. And I just thought, I'm done. When I get my I'm done moments, I'm done, I clear, and that is it. And I've been rereading notes, rereading correspondence, you know, because I may have kept going, but who is that woman? I do not correspond in that way anymore. You know, it was just very corporate, I suppose, you know, but also quite military. I come from a military background. My father was military, but it was just seeing that person through this person's eyes, through the woman I am today, and recognizing her that I wouldn't even like her if I bumped into her in a room. She just isn't somebody I'd want to be with. She was just stiff and inarticulate and joyless, and I just went to work to earn money, to pay for my mortgage and make sure that my boys were safe. That was it. That was my life. And there was nothing else, really nothing else. So yeah, I don't recognise myself either.
One question.
It's not like a cliche, and it was the truth, you know, that's just how it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you know, when you have like thoughts about if you've got a partner or something like that, or, you know, even going back to the Future, what would happen if your mum hadn't met your father? So it's almost the same thing. What would happen if you hadn't seen, you know, read that book about NLP or decided to go to that seminar? It's like, you know, how big would the delta be?
It's like the movie Sliding Doors, isn't it?
Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That messes with my mind. I do have moments like that. One of my favourite movies is A Wonderful Life.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Merry Christmas, Old Emporium.
Movie every year, every Christmas. It's like, I just love it. And I was watching it with my son, my grandson. Now he's only 7. Now explaining to a 7-year-old, it's a wonderful life, and you know what it's all about. But he really got it. And Pete, just like you're saying, that if this hadn't happened, so he said, so if you didn't have Daddy, then I wouldn't be here. I went, I know, that just blows my mind thinking about that, you know, and going back. I think it's a cool thing for people to think about, actually. Yeah.
It's like
done this one thing.
I mean, just kind of like just as a random, you know, like as a parent thing, because it's like there are times in your life you think, oh, if only I could go back and do things differently. I guess the thing about it is that you can only, that stops when you've got kids, because you suddenly realise that, you know, any change would create radically different people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's not like you could then have kids 2 years later on and still have the 2 that you've got, because you know that it's like just a strange, you know, genetic roll of the dice. So, but yeah, just a random aside. Probably has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
No, it's true. It is. And then I think, but would I know? I wouldn't have known that I would have those children. So would I mind so? That's what I'm saying. This blows my mind. This kind of conversation, the what if. And I think it's really healthy to be in that realm of what if as well, because it makes us appreciate where we are right now. I have made some abysmal choices in my life. I absolutely have. I made phenomenal mistakes, and now I just reframe that. Like, I've made them so other people don't have to.
Yes.
I made that. Like you, David. It's like creating excellence is right. I created excellence, so you can create excellence too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, like Detroit. It's like every year we crash thousands of cars, so you don't have to, sort of. Yeah. So, do you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to say. So Jacqueline, after doing all that, so you're in corporate. A lot of people come and do our trainings who are in corporate, and then, you know, they do our practitioner, master practitioner, whatever, and it ignites a spark inside of them that, in actual fact, they want to do something different. And you've already alluded to the fact that that's what happened for you. So you created the Athena Network. So tell us a little bit about the Athena Network.
Yeah, so originally I hadn't created the Athena Network. I didn't even have a name. It was just like I was running my own training and coaching company. So I've done coaching with you as well. That was the other thing. Knew there was something else. So that's what I was going to be doing. And as a direct result of doing that, one of my business advisors had said to me, if you want to grow your business, you are going to have to start networking. Honestly, I'd have rather stuck a hot needle in my eye. The very thought of going to a networking event. At that time, now I can breathe in easy. But at that time, I was like, I just do not want to do that. So I went to a few networking events, because if nothing, I'm a quick learner. So I was told you have to do it. I was like, okay, well, modelling excellence. This guy had done really well in business. If it worked for him, let me see if it'll work for me. But what happened was I was going to these networking events and I was coming out of them going, if it were me, this is how I would do it. And this is without judgment. It was looking at it from a very just curious perspective, actually. I think that's the way that I would describe it. It's like, I wonder why they don't do X, whatever it may have been. I wonder why they didn't send an email that was encouraging me to prepare an elevator pitch or tell me how to get there or how to park, all of these little things. And at that time I was working with this guy, he was my coach, and I think he'd got fed up of me because I was saying, well, I went to this networking event and I gave him a this happened, that happened. And I said, I really think that the way to improve their service, and I'd give him a list of reasons. And one day he just went, listen, he said, with the skills and resources you've got, why don't you just start your own network? And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to, because I think it can be improved. So again, not appreciating it at the time, but looking back in hindsight, I now see I was utilising skills that I'd already learned. So I was looking at what was excellent, what did I love least? And the what I love least was how could I improve that? What would I personally do? What would enhance that experience for me? So it wasn't an overnight thing, but it did happen over time. And back in the day, 20 years ago, because we're 20 years old this year, there weren't any other networks for women, so it was all very leading edge then as well.
Well, it's kind of like a direct application of the feedback sandwich, isn't it? Which you can apply to yourself, but also you can apply to other people. Okay, so what did they do well?
Yeah.
What could they do differently next time to make it even better? And overall, what's a positive statement? And that sounds like that's exactly what you applied to that network meeting that you'd gone to. And then okay, how do I apply it to myself to create my own network that works really well? And then also, what you've said about there is like, there's lots of business networks out there. How can you create something unique? And there wasn't anything unique. There wasn't the uniqueness at the time, which was the business network specifically for women.
Yeah.
I think also from a business point of view, because there are quite a few success stories where you've got people who, kind of like they got into something and they realised the delta or what could be. And a lot of the time it's like, when you say, why haven't they done it? It's because it's almost like when somebody gets into something, they kind of like, when they're fresh and new, they have new eyes and they don't have a set way of doing things. So you then come along and say, well, actually, it would be far better if we do this, this, and this, and this. And then that kind of like that new advance comes along and then it kind of crystallizes and you get someone else who comes along and says, well, actually, that's okay. Because it's like, you're, in most cases, innovation or product improvement is like 5 to 10% at a time. And it's about going along and saying, right, what is wrong with that? Conversely, there are lots of other folks who get into business who don't really understand, the benefits or, basically what it is that they're fixing. What is their key USP to their customers, which is it's like X, but without Y, which is the annoying bit, or it's like X, but it's with Y, which is the bit that's missing. And when people kind of get into business and they don't really understand that, then they really, really struggle because they're just trying to copy what everybody else is doing, but they don't have the important differential which you've created and kind of noticed. And again, using the excellence modeling to say, yes, excellence exists here, but that's not all it could be.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. And I think that there can be a tendency to get quite complacent in business as well. It's like, it's worked for 20 years, it's going to work for another 20 years. Like, no. You do a yearly review, a mid-year review, sort of quarterly. And again, I just go through that same process. It's like, what have I loved about the business? Genuinely, what have I loved at? What have I fallen out of love with? What bit don't I enjoy? And that may be just me personally, so maybe I delegate. But the other thing that we did do, or I did do, was I interviewed other franchisors. So I chose to franchise my business. Mm-hmm. I'd read it, long story short, I'd read a book, The E-Myth Revisited, by Michael E. Gerber.
Yep.
And I do not know what business it's going to be. So this was while I was doing the training initially with David. I'd read this book. I don't know what the business is going to be, but I know I want to franchise. And I had no idea what that was. But what I did do was I then interviewed other franchisors, completely unrelated businesses. So they weren't in business networking. They weren't even in clubs for women. It was like children's clubs that I interviewed, food franchises. There was a travel franchise that I interviewed, because I wanted that diversity of businesses and what was working with those franchises and what wasn't. So I interviewed the franchisors, but then I interviewed the franchisees, i.e. the people who would purchase the franchise. And I said, what's working for you and what's not working for you? And I tell you, the key thing, in fact, every single time, no exception that came up, was we don't get quality training. So yes. For me, it was like, got you. So I just felt like everything was coming together, which is how I then segued into doing the trainers training. But everything came together, and I realised that, so we had our USP, we were women, and it was only going to be for women. And the other thing that I was going to deliver, we weren't going to do business presentations, we were going to do, and still do, training. And that's just enhanced over the years as well. Yeah.
Going back to the subject of NLP in terms of when it started to come on stream, because obviously one of the things that we've heard about is, allowing you to basically take responsibility to, to be at cause, rather than at effect. And we've kind of had a look at and seen how it's worked for you in terms of your kind of like corporate life. In terms of your personal life, because again, you mentioned you've had kids. So did you find that it then helped with both your personal relationships as well, in terms of being able to kind of manage those, especially like the family environment, as we talked about in previous episodes? Yeah. Sometimes the family environment can be quite a fun and frenetic one.
I think that the family environment is my biggest learning environment, let's put it that way. So I've got two boys, there's just 18 months between them, so close. And I do remember I became everything that David encouraged us not to when we did our training. I just became this annoying person who was NLPing everyone.
Yes.
And,
that's what I did.
At the point they go, don't do that thing on me, that NLP. And I thought, I was.
Witchcraft!
I wasn't good at it. I was really clunky and... But do you know what now? What's beautiful, and I did say this to a friend the other day, I said, having grandchildren is amazing. If I could have had grandchildren first, that would have been brilliant. Because I utilise, again, unconsciously, but I'm utilising it with the children in our communication, in things that I'd like them to do. Example, I always remember the basic one that David had talked about. Would you like to have your bath now or after I've read you a story? I was like, my boys were much bigger by then, so I thought, I don't see how that's going to relate to me. But we should have little ones in the house, and it's things like that. It's like, shall we read the story now or after you've had your bath? And so I do utilise it much more with the little ones. I do with the family. I am going to be honest and say I was so bad at it at first. It was just like so overt. It was awful.
Like a highly visible ninja.
I did the same.
Invisible ninja, yeah.
I did the same thing. I would do NLP on anything that was basically breathing.
Or doing NLP at you.
Yes, whether it was a human being, a child, an animal.
Is there a difference between a human being and a child? I'm just curious.
Well, you know, I mean, I learned how to put dogs into trance very quickly. And, you know, I'd go around and visit people and they'd go like, what's happened to Fido? And he'd be like, totally out, you know, in front of the fire. And I'd go out for drinks with friends and they'd be pouring their beer down their shirt. Because I would go like, I wonder if by dinner tonight, you'd have realised certain things.
Nice.
So I was inducing trance with everybody. And I realised that very, very quickly I was going to become Billy No Mates because nobody wanted to go out with me anymore because they were paying for dinner all the time and spilling their beers. So that's what I realised. I needed to pare it back a little bit and
yes,
right time and place.
Yeah.
It's the whole behind the scenes. It's what we were talking about, isn't it? In terms of, you know, like manipulation and persuasion and all the rest of it. If you're seen to be, you know, like dance my little puppets, then people are ooh. Whereas if you can like, once you then get the hang of it and you can use it subtly under the radar, then people just see you as the center of like almost like a hurricane of nice.
I mean, it does change the way that you communicate and interact with people forever. You know, even if it's just the don't think of a blue tree bit, you know, whereas the majority of people spend their life telling people what not to do, then wonder why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And even just that subtle flip, you know, it's very subtle, but it has a huge impact on your interactions with people.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because it's such a lot. And the nice thing about it is it's quite a varied toolbox, isn't it? I mean, Jacqueline, because you've done, as well as NLP, have you done, because you've done HUNA?
I don't think
I've not done HUNA.
You've not done HUNA?
A little bit of HUNA in David's training.
Yeah, the morning sessions, but you've done NLP, hypnosis, and timeline therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because I guess the other thing about that is obviously because you guys are, with most people it's NLP, but the way that timeline therapy and hypnosis basically complement. So you kind of got like a lovely trinity. So in terms of like working out what to do, but also then having, you know, the tools of timeline therapy and hypnosis in order to be able to achieve what you have like worked out needs to be done.
Yeah. And I think going back to the question about family, you know, and how I've used it in my personal life, it would be so easy to think, you know, they're doing NLP on other people. But actually the changes come from within. For me, there is absolutely no point in me saying anything about anybody else until I've done the work in myself. What is it a reflection of? And that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I always come back to, you know, taking myself back to cause, and accepting the responsibility for what happened. And by doing that, it then very subtly changed the relationship with everybody around me.
Yeah.
So, and again, it wasn't something, I didn't notice it overnight. It was one of those things where I thought, oh, this is really lovely. Everything feels like easy. Leadership feels easy. Being a mum feels easy. I'm more chilled. I'm more open for having fun and, lots of other things.
Which is really, you know, the Jungian phrase of frame of perception is projection in action.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
One of the things I found, because obviously I've picked up a fair amount kind of like working with you guys over the years is, and again, it's almost like understanding like the railway line that people are running on. Do you know what I mean? It's like in terms of understanding how cause leads to effect, how people have these models and all the rest of it. Because once you then start to understand what's going on, it's almost like once you've been able to see a little bit of the coding, you kind of understand why the program does what it does.
They can change the points.
That's it. You know, you can then say, right, okay, because they're doing that in this way, As when I was learning to drive, I loved knowing what was going on underneath the bonnet. I'd like get out my dad's Haynes manuals from the marina.
Oh, I remember those, yeah.
And stuff like that. So I could actually understand, because it's like, rather than it just being a pedal and something happens, it's like when you start to understand, well, when you basically push down the clutch pedal, it's got these plates that goes, okay, now I kind of get what's going on when I do this. I can now adjust my behavior kind of properly.
Yeah, which is interesting, the way the kind of like world as it evolved. I remember getting the Haynes manual for my first car, which basically meant at the weekend I would go out and change a head gasket or whatever.
Yes.
But now the instructions basically say, don't drink battery acid.
Yes.
I think that's very sensible advice. Wouldn't have thought of doing it, but
No, but don't drink battery acid. Don't think of a blue tree. Ooh,
Yeah.
I wonder what would happen if I did.
Yeah.
Bye.
Well, it's a bit like the the baby food stuff, isn't it? Because you've got all these visual metaphors, and I remember there was like a baby food or something where they can like try to market it in the Middle East, and they said no, you can't do that because they read from right to left.
Right.
And so what you're actually doing is the things that you've got is basically implying that you're eating children.
Right. Okay.
right.
So. Okay, so what we've done now is basically just to recap in terms of the kind of stuff that we've gone through. So in terms of you kind of like bring it into your personal life, obviously it sounds like it started to bite quite quickly in terms of you starting to kind of get the benefits from that, and also then being able to use it in order to basically take responsibility for your own decisions, channel your life in a new direction, and we've seen kind of how that moves forward. So I think that's kind of answered that sort of question. Mm-hmm. What would be lovely is, would you be happy to join us for another episode of The Result Show?
I would love to join you on another episode of The Result Show.
Excellent, because it's been really great talking to you, and we've learned a lot.
I think the great thing for our next session with Jacqueline would be to fast forward a little bit to, you've already established the Athena Network, you've got 200 women who've joined that, and you asked me to speak at your inaugural conference.
That's right.
Which was at the Millennium Gloucester Place.
That's right. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so what we can then basically do in the next episode is we can then basically translate this and then see kind of like how you're using it now and what the tips are that you can then give to people who are basically managing networks, because we're all basically part of networks, whether they be professional or social, and kind of like whether they be large or small.
Yeah. Yeah, community is everything, I think, so anyway.
Yes, and I think a lot of people are kind of like coming out of themselves and discovering that a lot more, especially, I think a lot of the isolation of things like COVID and stuff like that has made us really start to reevaluate. And just the same way as like vinyl is coming back, going out to play is coming back.
Yeah.
Lovely. So, well, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this episode of The Result Show. As always, if you have any questions, comments for us, then you can contact us via podcast at
theresultshow.com.
And we... Sorry, I need to pick this up otherwise. Hello, testing. And so we will see you next time. Oh, I like the voice changer. And so we will see you next time on The Result Show.